Kindly be seated. A pleasant morning to everyone. We welcome you to August edition of the Premier's Monthly Press Conference. As you are aware, these monthly press conferences are designed to bring a sense of openness and transparency to the Nevis Island administration. As per usual, the Premier will make his usual statement. He will give his update on plans and programs within the Nevis Island administration, after which members of the press corps will be given the opportunity to ask their questions. In so doing, you're kindly asked to give your name and the organization, the media house that you represent, just in case we have to give follow-up information to your media house. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, join me in welcoming to the podium the Honorable Premier of Nevis, Mark A.G. Brantley.
Thank you very much, P.S. Daniel, and good morning to everyone who's tuned in via radio, via the various platforms, and certainly via NTV, Nevis Television. I greet the members of the press who are here and those who are on their way. This is, as I have continued to say, an exercise in transparent and open government. It is one of the signal achievements of this administration that we have made this commitment, and that every single month we have an engagement with members of the press, referred to in many quarters as the fourth estate, and certainly an engagement with the press is important, and I thank the members of the press who continue to participate in this very important exercise. This is the sharing of information, which is important for strengthening our democracy. Let me start where I normally start, by issuing some congratulations. I want to congratulate Ms. Charmaine Powell from Brownhill, who has been named one of the most inspiring leaders in risk management by Insight Success Magazine. Insight Success Magazine is a global publishing house that curates content for entrepreneurs and business community. She's currently employed by the ECCB as a Chief Risk Officer, but as I say, she's from Brownhill. Would have gone to Ivor Walters Primary School, certainly would have gone to the Charlestown Secondary School, and has made her life in St. Kitts, and we congratulate Charmaine for her stellar achievement. I'm pretty sure her mom, Iwan, is very proud, and so we say congratulations to her. Let me also congratulate Miss Tel Harsha Smitten. She has been promoted, we're told, to Cafeteria Chef de Partie at the Four Seasons Resort Nevis, and we continue to celebrate our young people when they do great things and are recognized for what they're doing. And so we congratulate young Chef Smitten and hope that she continues moving from height to height. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel very proud at this point to indicate to the press and to the public that on the 1st of September, which is a few days away, we will celebrate 2 years of the introduction and implementation of our non-established workers' pension. I feel particularly proud as Premier of Nevis that I and the cabinet that I lead were able to come up with a plan. And I would like to thank the technocrats who assisted in that, led by P.S. Wakely Daniel, who you would have heard from a bit earlier. That plan sought to give our non-established workers some comfort, some dignity, and has allowed them to proceed into retirement with something in their pockets and an expectation of some payment on a monthly basis. Now, why is that important? It is important because prior to September 1st, 2022, we had never extended to our NE workers that privilege. And we had people who would have toiled for 30, 40 years sometimes, who left, as we say colloquially, with their two long hands and got nothing. And so I would like to report that as we look back and as we look forward, I can say that we have so far benefited some 80 non-established workers under this scheme introduced by this administration. And so far, we have paid out to those workers some $4.1 million in gratuity, and we are currently paying some $82,390 per month or $988,680 per annum in relation to pension benefits. Now I want to emphasize something, and these numbers, I'm sorry, were as of July 2024, so as of last month. So let me say it again. As of last month, 80 NE workers had benefited under the scheme already. They had collected $4.1 million in gratuity and are now collecting $82,390 monthly, or $988,688 per annum. That is the payout that we've done. So I'm saying that because I want the press and the public to understand that this was a significant financial commitment by the NIA. Many people have talked about it. There has been chatter about doing something better for NE workers for years. This government has delivered. And on the 1st of September, we celebrate 2 years of that delivery. I get calls from NE workers. Some of them say the money has not come fast enough. I acknowledge and I apologize. But I say to them, at least you know that the money is coming. Because hitherto, you couldn't call anybody to say the money wasn't coming fast enough because you were not entitled to anything. Now you are entitled to something. I want to make one further point before I move on. And that is to emphasize that this is non-contributory. What I mean, therefore, is that the persons who are benefiting have not contributed to this scheme in any way. They have not had any monies from their salaries deducted over the years to fund this. Put differently, they have received their full pay over the period that they worked, and they are now receiving on what I would refer to as a gratuitous basis, a gratuity plus a pension as a result of government policy and a decision taken by this cabinet. So I want to make that clear, that this is a genuine effort to help our people and to allow our people to retire with some dignity. And so for all of you NE workers out there who have already retired, those who are on the cusp of retiring, I believe that you can now have some comfort that this government has delivered in relation to you. Let me move quickly to Culturama. Culturama 50, I believe, will be remembered as the biggest and undoubtedly the best Culturama festival ever celebrated on Nevis. The 50th anniversary was twinned with a homecoming celebration that attracted thousands of returning nationals from wherever Nevisians reside throughout the diaspora and on our sister island of St. Kitts. The 13-day celebration officially began on July 25th with an impressive opening ceremony. The ceremony featured cultural performances, reflections on Culturama over the last 49 years, and a lively and entertaining lineup. The highlight of the evening was renaming the Nevis Cultural Complex to the NEDAX Cultural Complex. The original members of the NEDAX group who pioneered the first Culturama Festival were invited to unveil the sign. I want to pause a moment there because I don't think that that simple gesture quite achieved the coverage that it ought to have achieved. The cabinet sat and the cabinet determined that the main venue for cultural activities on the island, hitherto called the Nevis Cultural Complex, should be renamed in favor of the Nevis Dramatic and Cultural Society. I hope I got that right, NEDAX. NEDAX was the group that had the idea to have Culturama. It was led by the late, great Cabo Howell, but it had participation from a large number of ordinary Nevisians who saw that it was important to preserve our culture. And 50 years later, we are standing on the shoulders of those who would have gone before. I was particularly happy to see so many original NEDAX members show up for purposes of this renaming. And I thank them for their contribution, and I'm pleased that the cabinet was able to take that decision to remember the contribution of NEDAX by renaming the main facility for Culturama after this very important organization. Under the patronage of the Honorable Eric Evelyn, our Deputy Premier and Minister of Culture, we also were able to award some 61 deserving individuals, organizations, and corporate entities for their outstanding contributions to the festival at the Wally Cultural Icons Award ceremony. The awards were presented in the following categories: cultural trailblazers, cultural visionaries, cultural royalty, cultural rhythms, cultural spirit, Nevision pillars, cultural entrepreneurs, and cultural legacy. We congratulate all 61 recipients. We had several competitions as part of the C50 festivities. These included the Greenhouse Band and Nevis Solid Waste Management Authority Junior Kaiso contest, the Miss Culture Swimwear and Mr. Cool contest, the Bonnie Panorama contest, the Republic Bank Mr. and Miss Talented Youth pageant, the National Bank Soca Monarch contest, the TDC Senior Kaiso Monarch contest, the Bank of Nevis Limited Miss Culture Queen pageant, and the Road March contest and Grand Parade of Troops. Winning the Greenhouse Band and Nevis Solid Waste Management Authority Junior Kaiso contest was Mighty J, followed by Mighty Zen in the first run-up position and Lady B in the second run-up position. We had Princess Kaylee in the third run-up position. Winning the Mr. Cool contest was Mr. Nevis Cultural Development Foundation St. Clair Rollins, followed by Elisel Dorset in the first run-up position and Devante Liebert in the second run-up position. The First Federal Credit Union Miss Swimsuit was captured by Khadija Lewis, and that was followed by Nangela Semple in the first run-up and Shakoya Flanders in the second run-up position. The Wally Rhythm Steel Orchestra walked away with the winning prize for the Bonnie Panorama contest. The St. Thomas's Primary School emerged winners of the Culturama 50 Republic Bank Mr. and Miss Talented Youth pageant. Alwyn Douglas Jr. and Kaija Nisbet represented them. The first run-up went to the Charleston Primary School, represented by Kadeem Taylor and Shajne Keynes, and the Elizabeth Pemberton Primary School was second run-up, represented by Dylan Elliott and Zacchaeus Stapleton. Joyson Library Primary School placed third, with Natra Mathura and Elijah Hendrickson representing them. Delhi Ranks, whom I last saw posting photos from Europe, where he's performing with Small Axe Band, he would have successfully defended the National Bank Soca Monarch Groovy title, and Rocco Dan placed first runner-up. Empress placed second runner-up. The duo of Ras Brown and Rocco Dan, father and son, captured the winning place in the power segment of the National Bank Soca Monarch contest. They were followed by Big Six in the first run-up position and T-Bone in the second run-up position. Veteran Calypsonian Oscar King Astro Brown won his sixth Culturama Kaiso crown in the C50 TDC Senior Kaiso Monarch contest. I congratulate him, my friend and brother. But Lady Destiny placed first run-up, while This and That, the perennial favorite, captured second run-up. We thank TDC for partnering with the Nevis Island Administration to make the grand prize of a Toyota Raise available to the C50 Senior Kaiso winner. Put it differently, the Senior Kaiso winner walked away with a brand new vehicle for Culturama 50. The Miss National Bank Group of Companies, Shequania Jeffers was crowned the Bank of Nevis Limited Miss Culture Queen for Culturama 50. Vanessa Simon placed first run-up, and Tikali Edwards placed second run-up. We want to thank Monroe College, through the efforts of Nivision Shervin Green, who works there, for the kind donation of a 4-year academic scholarship to the Bank of Nevis Miss Culture Queen pageant winner. We are therefore hopeful that Ms. Jeffers will take advantage of that scholarship and go off to get further education. I can't pass on, though, without really saying kudos to Lady Destiny, a young female Calypsonian. I'm told she came within 3 points of being crowned C50 Monarch. And, of course, This and That, who has participated, I'm told, in every single Kaiso competition for Culturama since its inception. I think that that level of engagement, win, lose, or draw, ought to be commended, and I commend Mr. Keith Scarborough, MBE, for his efforts. After an hiatus of several years, the original Casanova Band reunited to perform for their devoted fans during the 50th anniversary of Culturama. Their hit song, Legacy, earned them the Road March title, triumphing over the Core and Odyssey bands who came in second and third place, respectively. The Grand Parade results, fantasy category. First were Four Seasons, Cultural Energy. Second, Anastasia Revelers. And third, Royal Rampage. In the float category, first, The Legacy of Masquerade. Second, Who Your Bull Be. Third, St. James Fun Lovers, O Land of Beauty. In the folklore category, first was David Dynasty, Big Drum Masquerade. Second was On the Spot. And third was NYDC Masquerade Troupe. The old mass category, first, Those Were the Days. I want, ladies and gentlemen, to join the Nevis Culturama Committee to congratulate all C50 winners and participants participating in this significant celebration. Demonstrate your commitment to preserving Nevisian cultural heritage. We want to applaud the contribution of the private or fringe activities promoters towards the festival's success. Special thanks to Cane Juice Entertainment and Tropics, the Rhythms Dance Theatre, the Ministry of Tourism, the Department of Agriculture, Tim Keynes and Associates, the Empire Sports Club, the Nevis Cricket Association, the SKN Drag Race Association, the Nevis Theatre and Film Association, the organizers of the Miss Dainty competition, the Powerhouse 50, Legends Calypso Show, the Herbert's Beach Affair, and Miss Caribbean Culture Queen Pageant, the Ubrenta Sunday Brunch, the Junior Soca Don, Glow in the Dark Street Fete, and the Art Show Jubilee. Partnering with the committee enabled us to offer a wide range of activities for Culturama 50. The non-competitive co-events organized as part of the festival included the Culturama 50 Wet Fete, the Emancipation Concert, Juve, Poets in the Square, nightly entertainment at the Cultural Village, Panyard, Action Corner, Pan and Fashion Fiesta, and the Soca Teas and Kaiso Tents. These events similarly contributed to the spectacle of Culturama 50. Incidentally, as part of including all of Nevis, the Soca Teasers and Kaiso Tents were scattered all across the island. In the villages, at the little shops, everybody got a bite. And that was the intention, to spread the culture into the community. I make special mention of the Art, Craft, and Cultural Food Fair, which has stood out for many years as the festival's signature event. This year saw record numbers of 90+ vendors operating at the event. Similarly, this year's event recorded the highest ever attendance at the spacious and attractive Malcolm Guichard Recreational Park, as thousands of patrons came out to savor the local delicacies that were on sale, meet, greet, and mingle with friends, while enjoying the wide variety of entertainment that was provided. The combination of the above events created a spectacle never before witnessed on Nevis for any Culturama celebration. Let me also extend special thanks to the corporate community for their generous financial contribution to our festival. Your partnership made the festival possible. We are eternally grateful to all stakeholders for their part in making the festival a success. To the vendors, service providers, revelers, entertainers, and contractors who ensured that our venues were improved significantly and made ready for C50. You all remember, members of the press, some say it couldn't be done. Well, they did it, and they delivered in time for C50. The homeowners who offered their homes for the homestay program and all other significant players, we thank you for playing your part. The economic impact, ladies and gentlemen, of Culturama 50 cannot be understated. We are even now trying to assess the full extent of that impact. And that impact was felt not only on Nevis, it was also felt on St. Kitts. I have pointed out, for example, that many who came home for the homecoming celebration could not find accommodation on Nevis. and so they stayed at hotels on St. Kitts. The Goombay dancers from Bermuda, who have a version of our masquerade, they came to showcase their talent, a large group, and they stayed at Sugar Bay Club on St. Kitts, even though they came to participate in Culturama on Nevis. We all saw the movement of cars via the Sea Bridge and iConnect. In fact, iConnect is reporting that just over that weekend, they would have moved over 300 cars coming from St. Kitts to Nevis. We also would have seen the car rental agencies, including agencies that traditionally do not have a presence in Nevis, like Hertz, brought over scores of vehicles in order to make available those vehicles to the large influx of visitors. The restaurants, the various entertainment spots, those who are cooking local food. In fact, I won't call her name, but one restaurant owner said to me that if anybody said they did not earn for Culturama, tell them to call her, because it's like they tell it. And she said that she did well, and that's what we want to hear. So we are grateful to all. The influx of people into the Federation would have impacted our hotels, guest houses, restaurants, supermarkets, grocery shops, water taxi and ferry operators, car rentals. The increased airlift into the Federation was significant. In fact, we have seen some information which suggests that American Airlines moved over 6,000 people in July into the Federation. We are confident that a significant number of those were coming for Culturama and our homecoming celebration. To our returning nationals, visitors, guest performers, and all others who travel to Nevis for C50, we thank you for answering the call to join us for the homecoming celebration. I have mentioned the Goombay Warriors, and I emphasize them again, and thank them for traveling all the way from Bermuda to showcase their talent with us. As we look forward to 2025, we anticipate your participation in even greater numbers. Save the date, July 24th to August 5th, 2025. Let me turn my attention now, ladies and gentlemen, to a sad matter, and that has to do with the passing of young Devon Paris. I mention it here because Devon was a worker at the Ministry of Tourism. And he, as we know, was unfortunately killed along with his young nephew, only 9 years old, on St. Kitts, where they had gone for purposes of, I'm told, celebrating a birthday. I would want to go on record to extend sincerest condolences to the family of the late Devon Paris, and I wish to use this opportunity to express to his family our thanks for his years of service as a lifeguard at Pinnis Beach. We introduced lifeguards at Pinnis Beach in 2017, and he has been there for that period of time. His service will in fact occur today, and I hope to attend to show my respect to the family of the late Devon Paris. Last night, I made a televised address to the nation dealing with this issue of crime and criminality. I am pleased that I have this morning seen an invitation from the Honorable Prime Minister to a symposium that he is convening on Friday of this week, that is tomorrow, and that symposium is kicking off a period, I believe, of 90 days, if memory serves, but a period of time when the focus of the government will be on this vexed issue of violence. I want, ladies and gentlemen, from this rostrum to repeat and to reiterate that there is no room in our country for criminal elements. People now cannot argue and say that there are no opportunities. There are a host of opportunities for those who are not allergic to work. And I am urging our people particularly our young people, to take advantage of these opportunities. It makes absolutely no sense for our young people to continue down a path of crime which ends really only in one of two places. You either end up in 1814 St. Kitts, where I'm told the conditions are highly unpleasant, or you end up at Springfield Cemetery in St. Kitts, or at the Bath Cemetery with the Britannic, as we call it in Nevis. I don't want our youth to end up in either place. Neither is a good place for you to be. And the country is being robbed of the talent, energy, expertise, and contribution of these young people. When I talk to young people and I ask them, why are you shooting at each other? They themselves can't explain. There's no real economic benefit to them. A lot of it is ego. Who dissed who? And who said what about whom? And because we've become a society where we have lost the ability to reason and to talk to each other, we resort to violence, and the worst form of violence, where we take somebody's life. Imagine you're taking somebody's life because they diss you. Imagine that. You feel that they said something that was disrespectful, and that is enough to take somebody's life. I believe, as I have said and continue to say, that crime is a social problem. It is a social disease. It is something that comes from us and from our midst. All of us are related in some way to these criminals. Some of them are your boyfriends and girlfriends. Some of them are your brothers and sisters, your cousins, your neighbor. Some of them are your classmates, or you taught them in school. And so all of us must own the problem. On a program last night, I called in to comment that in Antigua, which does not have the high numbers of homicides as we have recorded, that Prime Minister Gaston Brown has come out quite forcefully in relation to that matter. Some may say he's doing what he ought to do as Prime Minister, and I agree. But what I also notice is that one of his chief political opponents now, Asset Michael, came out with a statement. And he said something I think which is quite profound, notwithstanding his political opposition to Prime Minister Gaston Brown. Crime is not a political issue. And he therefore reached out and offered his assistance to the Prime Minister, his political opponent, whatever he could do to assist to solve the problem. I have seen, unfortunately, that at every occurrence of violence or criminal activity in our society, there are some media houses, or so-called media houses, let me use that language. They jump and they put out these headlines, which are intended to do one thing and one thing only, create alarm. And somehow they feel that this serves some political agenda. And I'm not sure why. Because since this country has been grappling with violent crime, every single administration, the Denzel Douglas-led administration from 1995 until 2015 had this problem. In fact, our most murderous year, I recall, was 2011, with some 34 homicides. Team Unity took over under the leadership of Dr. Timothy Harris. And again, there were murders each year. In fact, the second most murderous year in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis was under Team Unity. 2016, if I recall, we had 32 murders. we introduced the program called the Peace Program, which I felt then and still feel, if managed correctly, could have made a fundamental difference. That program, however, lost its way because, like many other things, it was a good idea that was bastardized, and that became a tool for politics. But that program was really designed to afford young people an alternative pathway. It was never designed, certainly what was discussed in the cabinet of which I was a part, to pay people to stay home, pay people not to work, or to reward badness and bad behavior. Rather, it was designed to provide jobs, seed capital, to create businesses, and to give these youngsters a chance. Because let's face it, members of the press, a lot of these youngsters who had a conviction, many of them when they were quite young, could not get a job in the private sector because most companies are asking you for a police record. They can't get a visa because if they were to apply for a visa, the US Embassy or the Canadian Embassy wants a police record. They are not bankable, so no bank is going to lend them any money. And so the cry that we heard from some of them is they were stuck in a life of crime because that is the only way that they could sustain themselves. And so the idea really was to provide an alternative. It was never intended to create a dependency syndrome where people figure every morning they wake up, smoke a spliff or two, drink a dapper or two, members of the press, that's a Guinness, and then collect money every Friday. That was never the intention. Unfortunately, a lot of that started to happen. But I still feel that that program, whether it's called Peace, Elevate, or whatever it's called, where you give people an opportunity by creating an environment where they can thrive, by saying to them, you may have made a mistake when you were 17 or 18 years old. You may have gone to prison and spent 5 years. You're now 23, 24 years old. Come out of that life. Do something valuable. Be there for your children. Be there for your mother, who you cause expense and not to go and pay a lawyer for you. That was the intention, a very noble intention. And as I said, it's unfortunate that it went down a particular road, but I believe that there's value in that kind of program, particularly as I'm suggesting now, if it's coupled with some vocational training. And when I say training, I mean training for free. Get these young men and teach them how to do plumbing and electrical. Teach them how to grow vegetables in a shade house. Teach them how to do agro-processing. And allow our people once again to have the level of pride that our forefathers and ancestors had, and that many of us inherited from them. I hear people all the time saying poverty is what is causing crime. Lack of opportunity is what is causing crime. And yes, maybe in some countries and maybe in some contexts, people are forced into a life of crime due to desperate economic circumstances. But that is not the case here. Some of the people's names you hear being called and some of those that the police arrest, what is poor about them? They're driving around in their vehicles. They have jobs, some of them. They have access to resources. They have family and family homes. We must start to call this thing for what it is, badness. If I was sitting in Brantley, I would say worthlessness. But that word is difficult to spell for the press. Badness. That is what it is. And we keep pussyfooting around and trying to sugarcoat it and saying, oh, they grew up without a father in the home. How many of us in this room grew up with a father in the home? Many of us didn't. Many of us who came from an era when we went to school barefoot. You see any young people now going to school barefoot? We came from a dire and difficult circumstance, and we never killed nobody. We never resorted to crime as an answer for dire poverty that existed in this country. So a lot of what you hear, ladies and gentlemen, in my humble opinion, are excuses. A caller the other night to the popular On the Mark show actually said that the youngsters are committing crime because of what they eat. And I saw somebody put up something and said they just ate some KFC. They hope they didn't kill nobody today. Because it is that level of foolishness that some are peddling to try to suggest that they ought to be given a pass. And it is time, I believe, that we move from that and be resolute in how we address this issue. I spoke about Culturama. We introduced the Nevis Homestay program, and I am to report today, members of the press, that it is reporting considerable success. 90% of the properties that were listed were booked from July 25th to August 6th, which is a full duration of Culturama. Other properties were booked on short-term rental, which means that they were booked for 7 days or less. And one property is still hosting, and that person will be leaving Ireland on Saturday. The Ministry of Tourism and the Nevis Tourism Authority and the Culturama Secretariat, we wish to thank the various property owners for accepting our invitation to host our overseas guests during Culturama 50. And we are hopeful that this initiative, this homestay initiative, will provide a springboard for expansion of our accommodation sector and increase economic benefit to the local community. You will remember, members of the press, that the homestay initiative was to ask people to open up their homes where they had an extra room or two and allow people to stay. And again, 90% of the properties listed were actually booked over the Culturama period. Let me also report that the Ministry of Tourism partnered with Miss Phyllis O'Flaherty and her family to unveil a plaque at the New River Heritage Site to commemorate the contribution and life of Mr. Melford Musser O'Flaherty, who worked at the New River Estate from 1927 until his passing in 1986. Mr. O'Flaherty, we're told, was the last person in charge there during the era when that establishment, that mill, was still producing sugar. And he went on. In fact, I commented that we are now talking about community tourism. We are now doing tours. He was doing tours from way back then. And I remember as a youngster doing my SBAs for agricultural science that we would have gone there. And he would have provided the necessary information in quite detail from his head about how the sugar industry worked. The 2024 Nevis Tourism Awards Gala will be held on Saturday, the 30th of November. I'm giving early notice. Nominations are currently open for the following awards: Nevision Experience Award, Tourism Entrepreneur Award, Sustainable Tourism Award, Employee of the Year Award, Manager of the Year Award, Best Culinary Experience Award, Pillar of the Industry Award, and Corporate Partner of the Year Award. The deadline is Monday, 26th August. That's right around the corner. So please send in your submissions as soon as you can. Let me switch quickly to the issue of water. I start by commending the Honorable Spencer Brand and his team, because through hard work and some good planning, we have had no water interruptions on the island of Nevis over the past several months. I know the public had concerns, and we too had concerns, that with the thousands of people here for Culturama, the system would have been put under added pressure. We're grateful to God because he sent ample rainfall during that period that reduced the pressure on the water system. But there was also a tremendous level of planning that went into ensuring that we had no difficulties with water, and I've had no difficulties with water. In fact, even as Tropical Storm Ernesto threatened, and we saw water being turned off in other islands and countries around us, the island of Nevis had no interruptions in that regard. So I say commendations to them. They have done well. As you know, we are currently now seeking to access more water. We have contracted a company from Trinidad to do drilling, and they have embarked since the 31st of July at the first site, which is in Maddens. They are currently at 250 feet. The target depth is 722 feet, and we expected to find water at around 500 feet. Unfortunately, we have had some setbacks with the drill rig. We have had some setbacks because there have been some unforeseen mechanical issues, and as a consequence, I'm told that we will be delayed for several days while they fix those issues. We are also embarked, as you know, on a small desalination plant, and the Minister, the Honorable Spencer Brand, will give more information as and when that becomes necessary. Let me also announce that as we try to enhance our billing and ensure that our consumers and customers have more accurate billing, we have embarked on a program of changing out some faulty water meters across the island. We have started out in Cherry Gardens and will continue in the Golden Rock area. Areas in close proximity to these communities will also see some of their meters change. All we're trying to do is to update the efficiency so that people will have greater confidence that what the meter shows is accurate in terms of their consumption. Let me also make an important announcement on behalf of the Department of Physical Planning. The Department of Physical Planning is seeking to bring greater awareness to the general public, largely because we are seeing a considerable uptick in construction on the island. As a result, the Planning Department will be hosting a series of public consultations over the coming weeks, beginning at 5 p.m. today at the Franklin Brown Community Center. The general public is encouraged to attend and get information as it relates to the requirements and procedures surrounding development projects and applications. So I don't want you to say that you're having a difficulty with planning or planning is difficult. Find out what you require, and they're coming to you to try to give you accurate information as to what is necessary as you embark on building your own home. The Nevis Disaster Management, in partnership with the Global Support and Development and Regional UAV Services, have scheduled, a course on unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, during the period 26 to 30 August at the Nevis Management EOC building. The course aims to provide participants with the knowledge and skills necessary to safely and effectively operate and maintain drones. The training will be held daily between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. And I'm suggesting that all those who have drones and who operate drones, we know we have a lot of photographers and other people who are using them, that they avail themselves of that. We are and want to ensure that we have no accidents involving drones. The GSD, which is the Global Support and Development, they have also approved one Hotel Evo 2 640T Enterprise drone to our disaster management as part of the training. And I'm told that that's very significant because that drone has infrared capabilities. So it can be very useful, especially if we're doing search and rescue. Public Works Department are continuing their usual road maintenance program, especially since the passage of Tropical Storm Ernesto. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a tropical storm. That tropical storm led to a deluge of rainfall. I believe that every kindergartner understands that when you have storms and rains, you're going to get potholes. That's not rocket science. The water settles, our roads are asphalt, and you get potholes. I was therefore amused and bemused to see people who I think are sensible members of the Nevis community getting all excited about some potholes that would have developed in the roads as a result of the storm. the Public Works Department has a program. I believe that our people should now have some confidence because we are always out there fixing, remedying, improving. And obviously after every storm, they go around, they do their assessment, and then they come and they do the repairs. For people to be jumping up like Christmas come early because there's a pothole in the road strikes me as foolish in the extreme. And I just want our people sometimes to reflect on some of the things they say and do. Some of the things that they feel they have a gotcha moment, they're going to play a little politics with this because it's really nonsense. Which island in the Caribbean after a tropical storm doesn't have a few potholes that develop? Name me the one, and then come back and say that you're leveling criticisms. And if on the island of Nevis, where water didn't go off, and Nevis, by the time the all clear was given, on that evening at 8 p.m., could say that 99.5% of Nevisians were back on in terms of their power. We saw even on our sister St. Kitts, 24 hours later, 36 hours later, water and power still out. Nevis power was back on to 99.5% of our homes and businesses that very night. By the time the all clear was given, Nevis had our power back on. Water, we never lost that. The roads held up because of the engineering and drainage. The bridges and guts, we had cleared the guts before. So we had no problems. And I said to someone that if all that some Nevisians could argue about is that they see one or two potholes, then I'm happy. Because it means that they had no damage that they could point to. It means that our homes stood up. Look at all the homes, including the government housing, in large developments like Madden's and elsewhere. The fact that we could come out of a storm, which was closer to us than even to St. Kitts, because it came to the south of Nevis, and were able to stand up, and our infrastructure was able to stand up in this way. We are grateful to God first, because I don't want to be ungrateful. But we also must give some credit to the quality of what is being done on Nevis in terms of the infrastructure and the investment in that infrastructure. In fact, our Nevis guys have done so well that I'm told that 4 of them are currently in Carriacou, assisting the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique to get back their power after the passage there of Hurricane Bertil, it was called? Beryl, I'm sorry, that passed earlier this year. I think that we need to start to give Jack his jacket. And we really need to start to not major in minors. Because if, and we have a robust opposition in Nevis, they talk a lot, and if their big concern is that there was a pothole or two, not that the rest of the road network stood up, Nevis stood up, water stood up, but a pothole or two was their focus, it tells me that we are doing well on the island of Nevis. Public Works is doing their job, and I know they will continue where necessary. If you see difficulties in your neighborhood, please reach out to them. Let me move very quickly to health. SKN Moves, Nevis chapter, in collaboration with the Taiwan ICDF, they'll be hosting a free health screening on Wednesday, September 4th at the Cotton Ginnery Mall from 8:30 a.m. Available services include blood pressure, blood sugar, urine, BMI, information, exercise sessions. Please share with your family and friends. Remember, your health is your wealth. The Health Promotion Unit annual sneaker day is slated for Friday, September 13th. So all of you who need to buy sneakers, get them ready. I love the competition that they have each year. You're invited to lace up your sneakers and get moving. Join the Charleston Expedition scavenger hunt. Lots of awesome prizes to be won. Clues will be posted on Facebook. And then Caribbean Wellness Day will be celebrated on the second Saturday of September each year. It is dedicated to raising awareness and promoting actions to combat NCDs, non-communicable diseases. The Health Promotion Unit here in Nevis this year will be hosting Fitness in the Park, soca-sized workout. This activity aims to create a sense of community where all interested people will participate in a fitness session using headphones with an instructor who will guide the workout. This will be at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park on Saturday, 14 September from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Please register and join the fun using the QR code on their Facebook page and the flyers. There will be a mock sit-in, members of the press, of the Nevis Island Assembly Youth Parliament at the Nevis Island Assembly Chambers, Hamilton House on Thursday, the 29th of August at 10 a.m. The focus of the debate will be a bill shortly entitled Nevis Diversity and Inclusion in Education Bill, a vital piece of legislation that addresses important issues in the education system. What is noteworthy is that a contingent of 14 youth parliamentarians consists of the following distinguished roles: President, the Clerk, Sergeant at Arms, 6 honorable members representing the government, and 5 representing the opposition. They will do battle in the Nevis Island Assembly. So I'm inviting everyone to go out. And just so that I could recognize these young people who will be there in a mock parliament this time around, but I believe that some of them will be there in the real parliament fairly soon. Junice Eaton, she will be the president. Kelena Laville will be the clerk. Brianna Farrell will be the sergeant at arms. On the government side, Diris Stanley is our Premier and Minister of Education. N. Kosani Hanley is the Minister of Social Development. Tashela Phillip, Minister of Finance. Angelina Kalidas, Minister of Youth. Shaniel Nisbet, Minister of Gender Affairs. And Jazara Ross, Minister of Social Empowerment. That's the government side. On the opposition, Steve Walters Jr., Shadow Minister of Education. Micah Maynard, Shadow Minister of Social Development. Nichelle Otley, Shadow Minister of Finance. Kenayo Challenger, Shadow Minister of Youth. And Aisha Liebert, Shadow Minister of Gender Affairs. So they are going to be there on the 29th of August at 10 a.m. Please go out and support our young people. Let me go quickly to the Department of Sports. The annual sports camps have come to a close. I want to report that some 250 children across several sporting disciplines will have benefited from the camps this summer. Those camps included cricket, football, tennis, swimming, and basketball. And so this government continues to have partnerships so that our children are occupied during the summer. Cricket, West Indies under 17 tournament, Carlton Pluck, Light Brown, and Amore Jones were selected to the Leeward Island under 17 cricket team that participated in the Cricket West Indies under 17 tournament in Trinidad and Tobago in early August. We continue to see a number of our young players playing in regional tournaments annually. Kudos to them, and we encourage them to continue because we want to see them in West Indies colors. Let me commend young Troy Nisbet. Troy made history. He went to the 2024 Paris Olympics and became the Federation's first Olympian in swimming at the tender age of 15. He secured a personal best of 20.02 in the 50-meter breaststroke. Congratulations to Troy and his family, and we wish him every success as he continues to develop and hopefully become one of the world's top swimmers. Carifta Triathlon and Aquathlon. This is a newly established SKN Triathlon Association, and the selected athletes to represent St. Kitts Nevis at the Carifta Triathlon and Aquathlon event being held in Brandon's Beach, Barbados. Among the athletes were Henri Pemberton and Skylar Connor in the 13 to 15 category. The Aquathlon event is a swim and run. For the 13 to 15 age categories, it involves a 500-meter swim and a 2.5-kilometer run. So congratulations to them. I don't think I could manage that, so that is quite significant. Caribbean Football Union Challenge Series, we want to extend congratulations to Alger Newton of Bath, who was recently appointed as assistant coach of the St. Kitts Nevis under-15 national team that participated in the Caribbean Football Union Challenge Series in Tobago. We also congratulate the 5 Division players selected to the team: Kimani Newton, Malik Freeman, Lajuan Jeffers, Romero Hanley, and Majib Kelly. While I'm congratulating Alje, let me add that he has been promoted to the position of Deputy Director, Department of Sports, effective August 1st, 2024. Alje is a young professional who has demonstrated stellar work in both the physical and administrative components of the job. He holds a bachelor's degree in physical education from G.C. Foster College in Jamaica. We congratulate Alje and wish him continued success. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can switch quickly to education, the 2024 Leadership Summit would have started on Monday the 19th of August with sessions for system leaders and on Tuesday 20th for school leaders. The summit ends on Thursday 22nd, that's today. Back to school convocation, teachers and staff will be welcomed back to school on Monday 26th with a back to school convocation at NEPAC beginning at 9 a.m. under the theme United Under One Umbrella, Education for a Sustainable Future. Meet the Teacher activities are being planned for all public pre- and primary schools on the 29th of August and 30th of August, 2024. Parents are encouraged to stay tuned and pay keen attention to the information circulated by your child's school. Schools are scheduled to reopen on Monday, 2nd September 2024. We encourage parents and guardians to ensure that students are prepared for the reopening. We look forward to welcoming everyone back to school for the academic year. Mr. Juan Williams has been promoted to the post of Deputy Principal Education Officer effective 1st August 2024. Mr. Williams comes with decades of experience in education and leadership. He previously served as a principal of Charleston Secondary School and more recently as the education officer with responsibility for secondary schools, curriculum and assessment. We congratulate Mr. Williams on his promotion and wish him every success in his new role. Let me wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, with some financial information. As you know, we are now in August. It means that we would have had an opportunity to see the numbers for the Nevis Island administration for the first 6 months. In relation to our tourism and development levy, which is a 2% tax that is levied on restaurants and hotel accommodation stays, I am pleased to report that for August, normally as we know, a slow month, our revenue was up 16.55% on the same period last year, and it is up 208.5% over the same period in 2019. 2019 being our last full year prior to the COVID pandemic. That is for the month of August. In terms of the overall performance of the tourism and development levy, we are up 6.4% over last year, 2023, as at this point. Last year, as at this point, that is up to August, we had collected just $2.75 million. And this year thus far, we are $2.94 million from that 2% tax. I would want to commend the board, CEO, and staff at the Nevis Tourism Authority for their continued excellent work. Let me look at the broader picture and give some snapshots for the press and for the public. We are looking at the fiscal performance of the Nevis Island administration for the period January to June 2024, and we are comparing that to the same period in 2023. The total revenue for the period January to June 2024 was $119.89 million, an increase of 10.6% or $11.49 million when compared to the same period last year. For those who may be taking a note, this year, for the first 6 months, our revenue is $119.89 million. Last year, the same period, it was $108.39 million. Recurrent revenue of $81.89 million for the period January to June 24 increased by 9.5% or 7.17 million when compared to the 74.72 million collected for that same period in 2023. Tax revenue has grown this year by 8.76%, and non-tax revenue has grown by 12.43%. Revenue from one of our main sectors, financial services, has exceeded expectations by some 24.41% or 1.64 million, and has outpaced 2023 performance by 15.35% or $1.11 million. Stamp duties have exceeded expectations by some 143.76% or 5.07 million, and outpaced 2023 performance by 125.78% or 4.79 million. Import duties exceeded expectations by 13.13% or 0.6 million, and outpaced 2023 performance by 21.14% or $1.14 million. Customs service charge exceeded expectations by 12.61% or 0.53 million, and outpaced 2023 results by 21.5% or $0.84 million. Total VAT receipts fell short of expectations, 24.3 million, by some 8.4% or $2.4 million. Social services levy also fell short of expectations by 24.99% or $1.7 million, and has so far underperformed in comparison to 2023 by some $4.78%, or $0.26 million. Corporate income tax fell short of expectations by some 36.61% or $2.24 million, and underperformed in comparison to 2023 by a whopping 50.43% or $3.95 million. I have therefore given you the positives and I've given you the negatives in terms of the overall performance. As I said, these are just headlines. Let me move, because that was the revenue side, to the expenditure side. Recurrent expenditure for January to June increased by 10.49% or 8.11 million when compared to the same period last year. Current expenditure for the period January to June came in under budget by 0.37% or $0.32 million. Two main areas of outlay for our expenditure continue to be personal emoluments at 51.93% and goods and services at 21.54%. Personal emoluments continue to be a difficulty that we're grappling with. However, personal emoluments for the same period in 2023 amounted to 57.19%. So last year, as of June, personal emoluments were 57.19% of our expenditure. This year, it is 51.93%. So it is falling. And last year, goods and services were 20.89%. This year, that has risen marginally to 21.54%. Capital expenditure for January to June 2024 has outpaced that for the comparative period in January to June 2023 by 0.91%. Expenditure by the Ministry of Communication accounted for 30.86% of the outlay, followed by the Ministry of Agriculture, 26.98%, and then the Ministry of Tourism at 12.5%. Just so you know, the Ministry of Agriculture's expenditure would largely have been on getting the venues for Culturama ready, because that is the same ministry as the Ministry of Culture. The primary and overall balances are, as at June 2024, both in a surplus position. And that has widened in comparison to that position as at the same period in 2023. However, the fiscal deficit has increased in comparison to its level as of June 30, 2023. This indicates that recurrent revenue growth is still not sufficient to support the current rate of expansion in recurrent expenditure. So we still have work to do. The fiscal gap, though larger than in 2023, is considerably smaller than it was in 2022 and 2021. Also, both the overall and primary surplus balances are at the highest levels over the 8 comparison periods, 2017 to 2024. Let me look very quickly at total public sector debt. Total public sector debt as of June 2024 for the island of Nevis amounted to $539.77 million. In comparison to debt levels as at the same period last year, this was at $544.45 million, which indicates a marginal net decrease of 0.85%. Public sector debt stocks remain persistently high. Public sector debt as of 30 June 2024 consisted of $478.61 million in central government debt and $61.16 million in government guaranteed debt. Domestic central government debt increased by 0.5% or $2.25 million when compared to debt levels as of June 2023. However, in terms of our external debt, that is debt owed to creditors outside, that would have declined over the period by some 11.95%. I've therefore tried to give you, ladies and gentlemen, a snapshot, and I have presented information as it has been presented to me as the Minister of Finance. I will leave matters there and invite any questions that you may have, but I hope that I've given you sufficient information to garner a headline or two. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions. Good morning, Ms. Hewlett.
We see that the federal government ministers are coming under fire for what people are calling excessive travel in their neighbor on Ireland. We don't seem to see that in the NIA. Can you speak to how come all ministers are holding? Also, employees are complaining that they did not get their 5% increase, and based on your commendation, if they can look forward to that increase sometime soon. Since WinFM has asked, since the introduction of the straight flights to Nevis from Cape Air, has air traffic increased into and out of Nevis? And has there been any increased interest by other airlines offering flights out of the Vance Amory International Airport? We also have a question from Mr. Andre Huey of SKN Newsline. You would have already answered one of his questions in relation to the NIA's revenue. He asks also, how much are you receiving from the federal government monthly, and is this arrangement sufficient while plans for a proper revenue share, particularly CBI receipts, are being ironed out? He also asks, are there any immediate direct foreign investment projects happening or slated to happen on the island of Nevis in the near future? And those last few questions are from Andre Huey of SKN Newsline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hewlett. Travel by the NIA. I realize that the issue of government ministers and travel has become a hot button, a hot topic, and there are some who have used it for their own political purposes. What I will say, Ms. Hewlett, is that travel is essential in order for governments to function, because much of what ministers are required to do involves engagement with persons outside St. Kitts and Nevis, and it is not always possible to do so via Zoom or otherwise. There are some very important meetings. When I was foreign minister, for example, there were meetings at the United Nations, at the OAS, at CARICOM, that you expected to attend. So I said that at the outset. In terms of excessive travel and what persons may deem to be such, I know, and I can only speak for the NIA, that our approach to travel is that we only do it if it is absolutely necessary. And we then add another layer. We try to only travel when it is funded travel. That is, when some organization or entity is paying for us to travel. Very rarely do we approve travel which is unfunded, meaning that the taxpayers have to pay. I say that because it is something that we have applied not only to the cabinet, we've also applied it to the public service in Nevis. So, I know sometimes public service in Nevis get frustrated with me because they want to attend this conference or that conference, they want to attend this event. And my question always is it funded? If it is funded, the Japanese, the Taiwanese, etc., then we tend to permit that travel because it means it does not come at a cost to our local treasury. If it is not funded, then the bar is very high. I need to be satisfied that the travel is necessary. And if it doesn't fall into that category, then the answer most times is no. We will not fund this travel. There has been some frustration, but I believe it's one of the areas where we've been able to tighten up in terms of cost, because travel can be quite expensive. In my case as the Premier, I am called upon, I suppose, as a member of Cabinet who's called upon to travel most because of the portfolios that I hold and because of my role as Premier. In fact, I can announce now that I will be traveling on the 28th of August, and as part of that travel, I will be out for, I believe it is 8 days from the Federation. I will be going to Europe, and so some of that time will naturally be spent in flying back and forth. I think there's a day on either side. But there'll be more on that, because I always put something out to the media whenever I travel, and I would expect that the Deputy Premier will act. The Deputy Premier himself is also has been invited to travel to Taiwan, and so he will be traveling to Taiwan. I believe that he is going to be accompanied by some other individuals and officials from Nevis. On that trip, I believe he indicated that the Honorable Latoya Jones, our Deputy Speaker, and our Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Stedman Truss, will accompany him. And that trip is funded kindly by the government of Taiwan. So he'll be traveling sometime in the month of September as well. But I think it comes down to just exercising the necessary control, Ms. Hewlett, ensuring wherever possible that we attend meetings via Zoom or one of those meeting platforms. And as I said, once the travel is not funded, then the bar is very high. We have to be able to justify it as necessary. Once it is funded, the bar is a bit lower. But even where it is funded travel, we have made it clear to the cabinet members that we will only allow travel when it does not interfere with their local commitments, ministerial, and for those who have constituencies within the constituency. So that for me is important, because it is necessary that our ministers as much as possible are on the ground to deal with issues as and when they arise. So that is our approach on Nevis, and we, as I said, save significantly by adopting that approach. NEVLEC employees didn't get their 5% increase. NEVLEC, Ms. Hewlett, is run by a board of directors. NEVLEC is not run by the NIA. And while we certainly applaud NEVLEC and their workers for all the excellent work that they're doing, when they get an increase, when they get their pay scale, when they get their offers, that does not come to me. That has nothing to do with the NIA. NEVLEC is a statutory body, and NEVLEC therefore makes its determination as to increases, salary levels, vacation, pension. All of those matters are dealt with by NEVLEC and its board. So I would just say to the workers at NEVLEC that if you have not yet got an increase, then I would anticipate that you will get whatever benefit the board determines based on the performance of the company. I will only add that while we celebrate our employees when they do well, the fact that employees are working hard and doing well does not necessarily translate into the company having the fiscal space to always reward them as they ought to be rewarded. So I would want to just say that, but that is a matter for the board at NEVLEC, not for me as the Premier, because NEVLEC is run by that board. Introduction of direct flights, I am told anecdotally, I say anecdotally because I don't have numbers in front of me, that we have had an uptick in traffic at the airport, especially the Cape Air flights from St. Croix. I'm told that they're always sold out. Those have done quite well. Winnie, I'm told, has been doing quite well out of St. Martin as well. And so we continue to work on those. We have direct flights from St. Thomas. I know that the St. Thomas flight, which is a daily flight on Cape, that is being evaluated to determine whether or not we need it every day. But certainly we continue to have those flights. Also, of course, Trans-Anguilla, which is taking us to Anguilla and Antigua, as the case may be. Increased interest from other airlines. I'm not aware that we've had increased interest, but as you know, Ms. Hewlett, we have said and been quite open about it. The problem we have at Van Samre is that the infrastructure is obsolete. So we are trying our best to upgrade that infrastructure. And incidentally, on that airport project, we did hit a bit of a delay in terms of negotiating the last parcel of land that we need for the airport expansion. But we feel that we now have a way, we now have a pathway. And so we anticipate that we'll be able to wrap up that side of things very quickly. And once we have that, while that has been happening, of course, the work has been continuing in terms of the preparatory work, in terms of the design and the engineering work. And so we would anticipate that once we can remove that bottleneck of that delay that has been caused by our negotiations, protracted negotiation with one landowner, that we'll be able to move forward thereafter. The amount received from the federal government monthly, in terms of a direct contribution to the NIA from the Citizenship by Investment, that has remained at the same level that it was when Prime Minister Drew and his administration took over. That is $5.5 million per month. That was the amount that we have been getting and continue to receive directly. But I must say, as I've said on numerous prior occasions, that Prime Minister Drew has also ensured that all programs that are put in place nationally are extended to Nevis. So, for example, if they're back-to-school programs, if there are amounts that are being afforded to nationals, if there's the dividend that is paid, the $1,000 that was paid, you know, all of that was extended to Nevis as well. So that may not come to the government, but it is going to citizens who live in Nevis and who qualify. So I want to just make that point. In addition, as I explained before, the Prime Minister has also made to us 25%, available to us 25% of an annual sum that has been received by his government from the Republic of China, Taiwan. And that sum, for example, this year was what we used to do the renovations at our cultural venues, for Culturama, NIPAC, Cultural Village, and the Cultural Complex. So that is in addition, if you will, to the regular amount that comes of $5.5 million per month. In terms of investment projects, we are hopeful that we will see some movement on this long-promised and long-awaited Wyndham project. They have identified a new parcel of land in the Paradise area, and they're now going through all the planning and related stages of that. We have abandoned the idea of this project that was talked about for well over a decade at Indian Castle, and I am pleased to say that the lands that were involved in that project have now come back to the ownership of the Nevis Island Administration and the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation. I want to perhaps clarify what I mean when I say we've abandoned. We've abandoned pursuing a project there with those developers. And we are now looking to see if we can get other developers who can deliver a project to us on that same site. So we've not abandoned the idea. We just abandoned and disentangled ourselves from the legal entanglements that we had in relation to those lands. You recall that we had talked about an Amman resort, and then we had talked about a one and only resort. Neither materialized, and we realized that the years were passing by. And so we severed that relationship with that developer, secured the lands in terms of the title of those lands, and we are now seeking alternative partners to try and develop that particular property. Anything further?
Good morning, Shamika Budgeon, Vaughan Radio. Pertaining to crime, I know that it's a federal matter, but on Nevis, will there be a curfew that will be implemented? Sadly, 2 individuals will be buried today that lost their lives due to crime. In listening to your address last evening, I think that the polygraphic test for in-house national security staff is a very good idea, as well as asking for regional and international assistance. But when will this happen? And finally, when can we see foot patrols in our villages? Not just the police driving through our villages, but when can we see foot patrol along with house raids? Thank you.
House what?
House raids.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Budgeon, thank you for your questions. You say that crime is a federal matter. I want to correct that. Crime is everybody's business and everybody's matter. I think what you probably meant is that the infrastructure for responding to crime, the national security infrastructure, is in fact federal. Last night, I would have given a national address on the matter. In my twin capacities as leader of the opposition nationally, but also in my local capacity as Premier of Nevis. The Constitution really puts the responsibility for fighting crime in terms of our national security apparatus in Bastille at the federal government level. There is, for example, no budget in the NIA budget for national security. Police, military, etc., Coast Guard, they all take their instructions, direction, budget for their activities from the federal government. What the Constitution says is that as Premier of Nevis, I can give directions to the police, generally, but the police cannot accept any directions from the Premier that are contrary to directions given from Bastille. So put differently, my role as Premier, and anybody in the position as Premier, really just has a general oversight, but no actual authority in relation to the forces in Nevis. I can't, for example, even decide who of the officers will serve in Nevis, who will be in charge in terms of the Division C, which is Nevis. Usually, I get a notification, like everybody else, that so-and-so has been transferred as the officer in charge in Nevis. That is how it has functioned over the years. And so in a very real way, our security on the island of Nevis is in the hands of the federal government. And that is the same as the security of St. Kitts, the security of the Federation. I want you to understand, Ms. Budgeon, that when I spoke last night and when I speak from the positions that I now occupy, all I can offer are ideas, suggestions, recommendations. I have no power to implement any of those recommendations. So you asked me some very interesting questions. You say, when will polygraph testing be introduced? When will the regional security forces come in? You ask, when will these things happen? And my short answer is, I do not know. I do not even know if those suggestions or recommendations will find favor in Bastille. Because the objective of my statement last night, as I explained, was to excite some public discussion surrounding crime. As I said earlier in this press conference, I have now seen an invitation from the Prime Minister to attend a symposium happening on Friday. And I believe at that symposium, he will have an opportunity as a minister with responsibility for national security to lay out what, if any, of these recommendations he finds he and his team think have merit. And if the answer is none of them have merit, then what he's offering as a solution. Because ultimately the buck stops there. So my role is to provide support, and I've opted to take that path. Some say you're in opposition, you must oppose. But I do believe that on issues such as crime, taking a leaf out of what I commented on, seen in Antigua, that there's very little value in using this position that I have to simply oppose. There is, in my view, more value in extending the hand, as I have tried to do, across the aisle to say, let us work together. Because crime, Ms. Budgeon, is no respecter of persons. It is no respecter of party. I don't know any criminal who, before they rob you, they ask you support NRP or CCM? You are PAM or you're Labour? Criminals come to commit crime. They're not asking you those questions. So all of those out there who are jumping up every time there is a criminal activity or criminal event, and they're acting as if Santa Claus has come early, I am urging them to move away from that, because that doesn't help us forward. In fact, in my humble opinion, the only people who benefit when we the politicians and we the leaders fight are the criminals themselves. Because if we are focused on fighting each other, it means therefore that we are not focused on fighting them. And that to me is where the fight should be. So, I want to make it very clear that last night I was not making a statement as to what will be put in place. I was making recommendations for consideration by the government and by the public. Because members of the public, no doubt, will have their say as well. Some of the things I've suggested may be seen as controversial. For example, I asked that we look at the zones of special operations that was introduced under the Andrew Holness administration in Jamaica. They have had mixed results in Jamaica, but Jamaica is a different place to us. Much larger, much more difficult to manage. And as I understand, the ZOSO, or that was the acronym that was used, that they had limited and targeted states of emergency, where in areas that were problematic, that they could have a targeted state of emergency, curfews and the like, for that area, without shutting down the rest of the country. So you asked me the question, will curfews be implemented in Nevis? I have no power to implement a curfew in Nevis. But let us be fair that currently, Nevis has not had the same spike that we're seeing on St. Kitts. That should not give us any comfort, because we understand that we are one country and that people move freely back and forth between St. Kitts and Nevis. But as the current statistics stand, Nevis has not had the same spike as we're seeing on our sister St. Kitts. So at this point, in terms of curfew, in terms of implementation of any of those ideas, those will be for matter for the Prime Minister, Minister of National Security, and his cabinet. And I believe you know that I don't sit in that cabinet, so it is for them. So all of these suggestions, polygraph testing, etc., regional assistance, reaching out to the FBI, reaching out to Israel. I know that that sparked some controversy as well, but Israel has some of the best surveillance. So whatever our views may be on Israel and the war in Gaza, this is not what I suggested we reach out to them. We reach out to them for their technology. They have some excellent surveillance. And so I believe that we can do a lot more in terms of that. And there's a constant request for more bodies. We need more police, we need more police. But sometimes I think what we need to do is to work smarter. And if you have police officers who are trained and can use technology to assist. We, for example, know that you can triangulate cell phones. You can know where a call is being made from. You can track them. You can listen. You can do a number of things. And some countries have this technology available to them. Question is, are we willing to reach out to those countries and say, hey, we need help? The first step in solving a problem is acknowledging that you have a problem. And once you acknowledge that you have that problem, to my mind, you then reach out to those who can help you solve that problem. And so there's technology out there. I think we need to do that. But again, that will be a matter for the federal government and whether they find value in any of those suggestions. Foot patrols, I smiled when you said foot patrol because I wonder if you have more comfort seeing police on foot or seeing them in a vehicle. Because if they're on foot and something happens, I don't know if they could run as fast and chase down the perpetrators. In a vehicle, they might do a better job. But I understand your question really to be greater presence in the communities. And so I would hope that as part of their policing plan, that they are in the communities more. I said in my speech that all leave should be cancelled and police should be brought back, and said, listen, go into the communities. I don't want you sitting down in the barracks playing domino. I don't want you, at home. I want you in the communities, because that's where you get intel, that's where you pick up information, that's where you see suspicious movements. Our country is so small. There was a horrible murder that occurred right there on the foot of Craddock Road, the last terrible incident we've had on Nevis. And when I saw where that crime allegedly occurred, it is literally a stone's throw away from the police station. Literally a stone's throw. In fact, if police had run out of that police station and run up the alley, who knows? They might have been able to confront the criminals. It says something, Ms. Budgeon, that the criminals are now so bold that they will go in the police mouth to commit a crime like that. And so the police now need to respond. And I believe that we have exceptional policemen and women. I had a conversation with him, as I often do with the Commissioner Sutton. And I have confidence in Commissioner Sutton. I want to say that. Because what happens a lot of times is when there are failures, we jump to blame and accuse, and we jump to say this must lose a job and that must lose the job. That tends to be our natural response. But sometimes you're not doing as well as you can because you have been dealt a bad hand. You have a difficult situation that you're grappling with. And I don't think that any of us need to sugarcoat it, that there are elements within the security forces that need to be weeded out. Just simple as that. I asked somebody the question the other day. I said, well, how fellas in prison who are supposed to be restricted because that's what prison is, how are they still able to make phone calls and send out text message and give orders from jail? What, a cell phone just dropped from the sky and into their lap? Whenever you see those searches for contraband being done, and you see some of the contraband, sometimes they put up the photos, cell phone charger, all kinds of things. Where are they coming from? Who's allowing them into the prison system? And is there a connection with what we're seeing on the road and prison in terms of people communicating? All of these are things that need to be looked at. And so that's why the polygraph and all of that is important. That people know that, listen, you're going to be subjected to this. If you can't pass the polygraph or if you can't whatever, then sorry. We need to get to that point where it's no longer about, boy, it's a big family, and all of them will support me. And that becomes the reason for the decision as opposed to whether or not people are competent, people are honest, they have the highest level of integrity. because that's what you need for these types of roles. So, I feel that our police will be called upon to do more, and I don't want them to be upset with me. They are police officers, they are security officers, and they must understand and appreciate that in an unprecedented situation that we find ourselves, we will have to respond in an unprecedented way. And I thank them in advance for all that I know they're going to do to help to keep us safe. Any other questions for me?
Okay, Hewlett, Department of Information. I have some questions actually here from ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation. What is the status of the Alexandra Hospital expansion project? What is the status of the renovation works at the Nevis Performing Arts Center? And what is the latest update on the build-out of the boiler industry in Nevis? And on my own behalf, is the government aware of excess absenteeism from their employees, and how can they combat that when it's almost known that some people spend more time on sick leave and other absences than they actually do in terms of putting in work and being present on the job? What can the government do about that, and is the government aware of some of these situations?
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hewlett. Let me start with your last question first. It is a perennial problem of performance. And I think you've heard me talk about pay for performance in the past. We have developed a culture in St. Kitts and Nevis, which is not unique. It's a Caribbean culture, I feel, where some of our people feel we must do the very least amount of work, and we must try to extract from that the very maximum in pay that we can get. It is not unusual to see government workers come to work late, take extra time for lunch, and leave early. And Nevis is the only place that I've ever lived in my life where once rain starts to fall, before work starts, the phone starts to ring if the job canceled today. We only want to hear the weatherman say something might be coming, and people don't start to gear up for the holiday. In fact, the other day, I ran myself, I'm told, into some criticism because we were told that a storm, the storm name again, Ernesto, was supposed to pass, I believe, the Wednesday, memory serves? The Tuesday. And by Sunday night, the federal government had already put out something, said no work on Tuesday. And I asked myself, well, who in the federal government know where the storm going to turn? Because we know how storms operate, matter of hours they can shift. And so we waited in Nevis and we said, listen, we prefer to get the updates up to midday on Monday from our meteorologists before we took a decision as to the closure. And people got upset. I bet you, however, if payday is a couple hours late, I say a couple hours, because some people will log on early to check their account, that you will hear the hue and cry. So your pay must be on time. Your pay must be in full. And if you're careful, you're making big noise that you want more pay, but you can't come to work early. You must take an hour and a half for lunch. You find a bar downtown to be drinking alcohol during work hours. And then you go home as early as you can. And you mention excessive sickness, that is the latest thing now. In fact, when I sat in the federal government, they had a real crisis on their hands because apparently some doctors were giving sick leave even without seeing the patient. You could call in for your sick leave. So you call the doctor asks you how many days you need, you say 5. The doctor say, okay. We had a situation one time, and this is a real story, where we got a sick leave paper from one worker, who told us that she would be sick in 2 days' time. You all may think that that is funny. But imagine getting a sick leave certificate today, Thursday, to say that from next Monday you're going to be sick. That is the extent of what has been happening here. And these people are the first in line, Miss Hewlett, to make noise about more money. I want me increment. I want an increase in pay. But they're not prepared to put in the work. The answer is that those who are in supervisory and management positions in the various ministries must do their job. We have a culture that has also developed that supervisors and assistant permanent secretaries and managers in the various departments, they come to the minister and they tell the minister that this worker X is a bad worker. Don't come to work, they're always sick. They say that they're on sick leave, but they travel overseas. They do all of this. But when the minister then asks, can you write them up? Oh, you know how we got church together. That girl's sister married to my cousin. We don't want no problem in my family. So we have a real problem because the Public Service Commission is not going to act on somebody's say-so. They want to know that this worker was written up, the violation was documented, the worker was given a chance to respond. You are away excessively for sick leave. Well, how do you explain that? Before a matter is escalated to them. They are not going to deal with somebody whispering in their ear and telling them that's a bad worker. And that has been our fundamental problem that we've had in the public service. Those who are supervising are reluctant to document concerns about bad performers. And then we get stuck with them because we have a culture where nobody wants to offend anybody. How do we deal with that? In big countries, I suppose it doesn't matter because you don't really know, interact, or see people. Again, if somebody gets fired today, you never see them again. But here, where you run into people in the supermarket, you run into them at church, they're married to your cousin, you're there with their sister. It's a difficult situation. And so we have been trying to work on that. How do we do these evaluations? Do you know that the government has evaluations that need to be done every year? In fact, those evaluations, if not done, if the people don't do good on them, they should not get an increment. But a lot of people now are treating increment as if it's guaranteed. It's not guaranteed, you know. The increment should only come once you have satisfied your supervisors and the ministry that you're performing. And we have had situations, and I must mention it, where people are given glowing performance reports by the supervisor. And that is what is on paper, but then the supervisor calling the minister to say the person is a bad worker. Well, how do they get such a good report? Because again, we don't want to offend. We don't want nobody vexed with us. And that has been one of the biggest problems. So people call me as a premier. They say, oh, is this person late again? So I say, well, where is their department head? Because that's their job, that's not my job. It is their job to manage their department and to ensure that people who are not performing are weeded out. So I use this as an opportunity to call on those who are in those positions to do their job. And if they do their job, I think we'll be a lot better off. Status of the Alexandra Hospital, I don't have an update today. That I did explain that we had taken a decision as a cabinet to put on hold until such time as we got through the Culture Armor festivities. So we are only now starting to reopen discussions about how we proceed and obviously the funding on that project. But it is a critical project and it is one that I can assure the public we will get to. NEPAC, as far as I know, the majority of what needed to be done at NEPAC has been done. In fact, NEPAC was recently used for an archaeological conference that we had here. I'm told they had over 200 participants, and NEPAC was the space for that. So again, we did come under some criticism, but we decided that NEPAC needed to be repaired. It was leaking, AC was not working, sewage problems. We have resolved those issues for the most part, and so we expect that the work there is substantially complete. The broiler industry in Nevis, again, I do not have an update that I can give. The last that I knew of the broiler industry in that discussion was that we were in discussions through the Ministry of Agriculture with persons to construct the slaughter facility. And we had had some quotations which were on the high side, and I know that there was some back and forth in terms of negotiations on that. But I can assure the public that we are committed to having a broiler industry on the island, and that those who are interested should not lose faith. We will be rolling out something in short order, and I will certainly come back, Ms. Hewlett, with more information as and when I have it. Anything further for me?
Just one additional question. LK Hewlett, Department of Information. This is coming from Glenn Bart at SKN Newsline. He says, the current escalation in homicides by way of gun violence is indeed alarming, but the proliferation of guns in the Federation as well as in the region has been going for some time. Based on your knowledge from the perspective of a political leader for several years, what has been fueling the importation of firearms? Is it, for example, an organized narcotics trade going through St. Kitts and Nevis? Question 2. In your opinion, what has led to the decline in moral and social values that are manifesting through antisocial behavior, violence, intolerance, etc., in some of our young people in the Federation? That's from Glenn Bart, SK Newsline.
Mr. Bart always asks some difficult questions, because when you start to ask what is in my opinion, I don't know my opinions are newsworthy, but let me say that the decline in moral and social values, that's a complex question, because I think that there are a number of factors that contribute to that. We have, of course, young people having children. Some of them are children themselves. We have men in the homes and in the communities preying on young people, sometimes on young women and even on young men. We have women who are having sometimes multiple children with different fathers. We have men who are not supporting their children. And something that I have always marveled at that has become common in Nevis, the women who are not getting child support are proud to say that they now carry no man to court. I'm not sure where that has become fashionable, but believe me when I tell you that a lot of women who are not getting the support that they're entitled to by law for the children are saying they're now carrying a man to court. So you have a breakdown in what I would call the family unit that has contributed. You have other things that perhaps we have not quite grasped yet. St. Kitts Nevis has a very high penetration of cell phones, so-called smartphones. In fact, I was watching something the other day and somebody said the phones now are even smarter than us. And reflect, Ms. Hewlett, and Mr. Bart, if he's listening, that you take a child, 6, 8, 10-year-old child, and you give them an iPhone, Samsung or whatever, where once they have data, they could search and see anything. They're on a TikTok, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They could see anything under the sun, the good, the bad, and the ugly. From a young age, they're bombarded with information, a lot of it negative, a lot of it false. They are, at that age, the most impressionable. And then we who are adults glorify and publicize a lot of things that we ought not to. You have nudity, you have photos and videos that are sent around to try and embarrass people. All of this the children have access to. It's not as if that there are some phone companies out there. It's not Flow. I've never heard Flow or Digicel or the cable yet say, we have something that is just for the kids. Meaning, on this something they can't access this, that, and the other. So every time you give your child, and parents, I'm going to defend some of the parents because they do it for legitimate reasons. I want little Johnny to have a phone because if I need to call or there's an emergency or mommy or daddy going to be late, I could contact. So I recognize that there's a need. But once you give little Johnny or little Susie that telephone, they have an access to a world of badness. And it is one of those things I don't believe that we were ready for, that we prepared for, and that there's been any study done. And St. Kitts and Nevis, we know, based on statistics we have seen in the past, has one of the highest penetrations of mobile devices in the region. Most people in St. Kitts and Nevis have 1 and 2 and sometimes 3 devices. So that is a factor, in my view. Then we have other things. Miss Hewlett, our school system, they have taken a lot of things out of the school system now. Discipline. Parents used to be revered. People have it as a joke, but it's true that if, in my era, admit a long time ago, but if I went to school and the principal or the teacher disciplined me in school, when I went home I got a second dose. Because my mother's approach was, you must have done something for them to discipline you. Now, when you discipline the children, the teacher reaches to the school to fight, the parent reaches to the school to fight the teacher. They get on social media and they cuss the teacher. And I am prepared to wager that if you were to do an analysis, you start to see the lack of discipline, the parents that respond negatively to anybody in authority seeking to discipline their children. And you've tracked those children, and you end up with people who are committing crime. You have parents who encourage bad behavior in their children, who defend them to the end of the earth, no matter what they do, who in many cases are involved in their criminality because they're hiding the contraband, they're doing all that. The reality is that our society as a whole has declined. I have spoken in the past about the coarseness that has infiltrated our society. You know, we have an organization here, I'm not sure what they're called, but I'll try to describe. They should control broadcast standards. So, for example, certain things should not be on radio or being broadcast publicly. And when I listen to some of the radio stations and hear the DJs and what the DJs are saying and listen to the music that they're playing, you all remember there was a time when there was a song with explicit lyrics. You had a beep or something when that lyric came up. Now it looked like the beep them done with. As raw and as gutter and as nasty the lyrics are, everything coming through. And I wonder if that organization still exists. Because I know your broadcast license could be suspended if you're engaging in things like that. And then it's not even the music, the DJs. You listen to them, you listen to what they're saying. Comments that they're making, the sexually explicit comments. The curse words. I see some curse words being used here in public. Coming out of Jamaica, I went to law school in Jamaica, so I know when you say certain words in Jamaica, they are terrible curse words, but they're being used here as if nothing. I happened to be at the Singers Music Festival this year. And there were DJs on stage playing between acts. So once one singer or whatever left the stage, a DJ would keep the crowd entertained. And when I listened to some of the songs that were playing on that sound system, permeating the whole music festival crowd, and I'm sure homes in the environment, you didn't want to hear some of the slackness, some of the gun lyrics, the bad man lyrics. And for some reason, our children know the lyrics word for word. You know, I happened to be at the offices of Daniel Brantley one day. They're right there on the Charlestown Main Road. And I heard a racket, and so I went to the window and looked out. And it was one of the primary schools having a rally of some kind. So they were in an open vehicle. They call them safaris. And you know the song that they were singing was Byron Messiah's song, Taliban. And that's the song that these children were singing verbatim. Now, I have tremendous respect for young Messiah and people like those who are out there applying their craft and making a living. And no doubt his music and the music of others, in the right crowd, in the right space among adults, might have its place. But them little primary school children singing lyrics word for word, it attracted my attention because I said, well, how them know? Me an old man, I mean, know them lyrics there word for word. How them little children know? Word for word. This wasn't the national anthem or the school song they were singing, you know. This is bad man music. They were singing word for word. You got some groups out of Trinidad now. They call it Trinbad or something music. And it's all about glorifying a particular culture. Now some may say it is just art. And I think there's some justification for saying in some cases it is art. But we have to be careful of when art starts to imitate life. Or life starts to imitate art. And the lines now become blurred. So when a man is singing about gun, it's really because he's a gunman. When he's singing about killing, it's really because he's a killer. As opposed to, as some try to say, I'm only describing what I see in the community. Question is, do you have, even as an entertainer, an obligation in terms of what you put out, what you convey? I'm not going to get into it because I know it's controversial, but I see Vibes Cartel back on the road now. And Vibes Cartel come back on the road. And I was hoping that Vibes would come after 13 years in prison to start to tell the youth them, this is not the life. You don't want to go through what I went through. But all you hear now is Gaza and Gaza and Gaza. I'm sure most people here have never been to Gaza. They have no idea where Gaza is. Well, the Gaza is in a war right now in terms of Israel, but the Gaza in Jamaica. And the biggest thing now you hear everybody talking about is when Vibes come and sing his Nevis. When he come in. So we have to be careful, Mr. Bart, what we are portraying and what we are projecting. Some people could listen to gangster music and it doesn't have any effect on them because I know when I listen to Tupac or I listen to Biggie that I'm listening just for entertainment. But if you are impressionable, especially among the young, and I will just say the young because some people got the age but they're still not developed mentally either. But when you listen to that, and that is glorified, and every song you hear, pow, 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 you lick shot and this and that and the other, it becomes normalized, as if this is normal behavior. And if you realize in our society, no, when somebody gets killed now, you know, they say, oh, next one gone. You're not hearing a big outcry, and no. It used to be that when a murder happened, it like the country came to a standstill. Now, oh, you hear that, the next one gone. Just like a bottle mashup. And I believe we have been desensitized that the music, the culture, a lot of it foreign to us. We never start no bad man music in St. Nevis as far as I'm concerned. But we hear it from out there, we bring it and we try to make it our own. And as a result of that, all of those things coupled together has led us down a particular path. It did not happen overnight, and it can't be resolved or corrected overnight. But one of the things that I suggested in my speech just last night, I said, listen, we need to reintroduce moral and ethical education in the schools. Our children from down here need to start to learn. You don't solve disputes with fighting and violence and anger. You don't steal your classmates' stuff. From down here, you be respectful. If you're a boy, you must respect your female classmate and vice versa. But if we inculcate that since they reach preschool, right? I saw Sean Richards, I'm going to call his name, because he put up something on social media one day about he entered a bus and said, good morning, and nobody answered. And on that bus he said, well, students in uniform. And I thought that was very sad. But Sean Richards is from St. Kitts in Sandy Point. Sean then reached out to me privately and told me there was a bus in Nevis. He happened to be in Nevis because he does some work over here. And he said he caught the bus. And he went on the bus. As Sean Richards, former Deputy Prime Minister and a parliamentarian, and he said, good morning, and nobody in the bus answered him. There was a time when that in Nevis was unheard of and unacceptable. In fact, somebody would meet your mother and say, that child they passed me, you know, and what the child was saying or the conduct or whatever, and you get in trouble for that. We used to go to the high school on your Charleston Secondary School, and if anybody saw you in your uniform downtown during school time, problems. Now you see the kids walking up and down like nothing happened. So we have lost our way. I could go on and preach for another half an hour. We have lost our way. So we now need to put Humpty Dumpty back together again and work on it. Proliferation of guns. What is fueling it? I have heard theories, Mr. Barr. For example, it is said that yes, there's some transshipment of drugs that occurs in all of these islands. And that when the transshipment occurs, now the suppliers are not only just paying money, they leave you some drugs and some guns as part of the payment. So whereas maybe in the past you got $1,000 per kilo or whatever it may be, they're now saying, well, I'm going to give you 500 and give you some drugs and give you some guns. We can't underestimate the impact of what is going on in Venezuela, because there's been a proliferation of weapons reaching to Trinidad. It's only 7 miles, I think, from Venezuela to Trinidad. And instability in Haiti and those places has also led to more arms and ammunition flowing in the Caribbean. But I'm going to say so today, that the biggest problem that we have in relation to illegal firearms is the United States of America. And one of the things I asked for in my speech last evening was that we call upon the United States to do more. A lot of guns that are finding their way into our federation and being used to kill people, finding their way into the Caribbean and being used to kill people, are coming out of the United States. The United States has a love affair with guns. It's one of the most armed countries in the world because everybody and their cousin has a firearm. And it therefore creates the environment, the petri dish, if you will, where people who are bent on criminality can easily acquire guns. It is possible that some of the guns committing crimes down here were obtained legally in the United States. Because you go in, you know, there's some states in America where you can't buy alcohol, you can't buy tobacco because of your age, but you could buy a firearm. You could buy an AK-47, an AR rifle, a Uzi. You could buy a firearm, you could go in and buy a Glock, but you can't buy alcohol or tobacco. They say that is dangerous to you. Well, if alcohol is dangerous to you, well, I suppose you can get drunk and kill somebody in an accident. Tobacco, I believe you're mostly killing yourself. But a gun. But yet, you can go and just show your ID, go to a gun shop, and 17-year-old, you buy a weapon. That is why in the United States you have all of these mass shootings in schools. Whenever it happens, you hear the pundits start to wring their hands and talk about, oh, the child had mental issues and the child was bullied and the child was that. The one thing that they're not admitting is that the child could not commit a mass murder unless he had a gun. And how we get the gun? 9 times out of 10, he ain't thief no gun, he ain't rob no place and get a gun. Is guns from home or guns that that child was able to purchase legally. Well, those same weapons are now finding their way into the Caribbean. And I believe the United States has to do more. It has the capacity to do more. And it has to be called upon, because we cannot continue to pretend that our problem with gun violence is not connected to the proliferation of weapons in our closest neighbor, the United States of America. They are part of our problem. You restrict the guns, and you start to restrict the level of violence that you see in the community. I'm not saying you're going to eliminate it, because as somebody reminded me, in the Garden of Eden, Cain killed Abel. I don't believe he used a gun. So badness has always been with us. The heart of man is evil. But when you give people access to high-powered weapons, to automatic weapons, it means that their capacity to do damage. We had a shooting in Jamaica. 17 people shot in one incident, 8 dead. One incident. But they don't make guns in Jamaica as far as I know. In fact, they don't make guns anywhere in the Caribbean. So who's responsible for the proliferation of weapons? That's a big issue. So, Mr. Bard, I hope that I've answered your question as best as I could. You asked me some difficult questions, and I believe the answers are complex. But in the proliferation of guns, we need to lean as a region more heavily on the United States to say to them that if we are to be partners with them in security, they want us to assist them in restricting the flow of guns and flow of drugs, into the United States, then equally they must assist us in restricting the flow of firearms into the Caribbean. Because that is what is doing the most damage here. Anything further for me?
Shamika Bajin, Von Radio, and this is my final question. From an education standpoint, CXC results were released on Tuesday, August 20th. Can you provide some details on how our Nevision students did? Thank you.
Ms. Bajin, last question, and I'll be short. No, we don't yet have the data. I'm told just yesterday, the Minister of Education, the Honorable Troy Liebert, would have reported to the Cabinet that we're having some glitches in terms of our access to that data. Individual students apparently are being able to access their individual results, but the platform to allow the officials to access the overall results, that we were having some challenges up to yesterday. So we have not yet got that information. But I expect that the Minister Liebert will provide that information in the usual course, because he would normally do an address when he sets out what the results were like. I see some individual students and their parents have been celebrating, so I celebrate with them and pray and hope that everybody would have met some level of success in their exams. I will say that I'm told that there are some subjects like mathematics that are coming back ungraded, and that appears to be an issue. I just want to assure the public that ungraded, I'm told now, doesn't mean that, all it means is that the grade is delayed. So the results are going to come for those subjects later. Ungraded kind of sound like something went wrong. like you didn't do the exam or there was some difficulty, but I'm told that ungraded really means that the results will come at a later date. So the minister will have to report on that, but yesterday, up to yesterday, we did not have all the information yet. So I apologize for that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 10 past the noon hour, lunchtime for some. I want to thank you again for being here. This has been our press conference for the month of August, and we look forward certainly to seeing you, God willing, in September. Thank you, and have a nice day.